This is your Business Like a Pro podcast, episode 55.
Welcome to the Market Your Business Like a Pro podcast with Ken Countess. Ken is an internationally recognized marketing expert. This podcast will give you tips on how to market your business more effectively than ever before to help you make more money, whether you're just starting out or have been in business for years. And now, here's Ken Countess.
Hey, welcome to the Market Your Business Like a Pro podcast, and I'm Ken Countess. We're into year 2 now. I can't believe it. We completed episode 52 a few weeks ago, so we've had one a week. We're into year 2 now, and I'm delighted that today we're honored by having Steve Morris with me. Steve is based in San Diego, California, and for those of you who listen to us all the time or watch us too, we're in Orlando, so we're coast to coast and maybe around the world, depending on which way you're coming from. So Steve, welcome to the Market Your Business Like a Pro podcast.
Well, Ken, thank you so much. I do appreciate you hosting me here today. I'm excited for our conversation.
Steve is a brand expert, and he's written several books, and he's done all kinds of really neat things, and we had a chance to chat for a few minutes before we started recording. So, Steve, I'll just let you go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about you, let your audience know what you're up to, and let's have a great, fun conversation.
Great, Ken. Yeah. So thank you. So for the past 25 years, I've run a brand consultancy. The name of that consultancy is called the Empty Gris, M as in Mary, TH degree. So really think about it in the terms of the mathematical term nth degree, which means without limits. And so for us, really, it means marketing without limits. But
Cool.
The reality is that we work with the intersection of organizations when they're looking to grow, when they're looking to evolve. And every business out there has influences, sometimes internal influences, sometimes external influences, that really kind of encourage them to take the next leap and go to the next level. And so that could be something internally like a merger or acquisition. A new CEO comes on board and wants to take the organization a new direction. Or it could be external, where they want to launch a new product out in the world or refocus where their product marketing actually goes, or they've lost market share. And so what I do is I work with the leaders of those organizations to mine what I call their most deeply held beliefs, which is their purpose, their mission, their vision, the core values, and the promise. Create brand language or a messaging matrix around that, infuse that within the culture, work with the culture to adopt that brand, and then represent that brand through the consumer experience. And then ultimately what we do is we express that brand, roll it out into the world. So I've worked with more than 250 brands. Some of them are big global organizations like Samsung and LG and Sony, and some of them are smaller, more local organizations, including the San Diego Padres and the Port of San Diego and the Fleet Science Center. And again, the work that I do is helping those companies evolve.
That's great. Well, I've certainly heard of the San Diego Padres, being a baseball fan myself, and they didn't make it to the playoffs this year, did they?
No, they're
neither
not.
Did my team.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say the Padres, unfortunately, are not well known for making the playoffs, at least in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm a diehard Met fan.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Yeah, so I did go to the '86 World Series way back when.
Yeah.
But it's been a drought for quite a while. So I know that you've done work with the Padres. I see that you've also done work with the NFL.
I have, yeah. We worked directly with the NFL, and we had a 10-year relationship with the San Diego Chargers when they were still here in town. And so we evolved their brand and did all their marketing for about 10 years and did a lot of work for the NFL and the Players Association as well.
That's great. So, and I also see from your bio that you've worked with over 3,000 businesses. Now, that's pretty impressive.
Well, actually, 250 businesses, over 3,000 business leaders. So within,
Okay.
yeah. So just to be clear on that, I don't, yeah, that's a lot of businesses to work with.
Sure.
We have had, and I'm very fortunate that I've been entrusted to work with such a wide variety of brands that, like I said, are both local and national and global. But the big pleasure for me in my work is working with those business leaders. And typically an organization, there's not just one leader, there's many leaders who are leading different charges within that organization. And I've been very fortunate to learn from a lot of very smart, dedicated, and passionate people.
Well, you may have learned a lot from them, and I'll bet they've learned a lot from you too.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
So, Steve, before doing what you're doing today, what was your last gig, so to speak, and why did you leave it?
Yeah, my last actual job, like I consider myself perpetually unemployed. Those of us that own a company and have built it from scratch, we depend on our own sort of wherewithal to make our way through the world. The last job I actually had was back in Washington, D.C., and this is back, Ken, in the early 1990s when I was a creative director for an agency in DC. And my clients included Coca-Cola, IBM, Nintendo, Discovery Channel, History Channel, things like that. And sort of my job within that, coming up in the industry as a creative, was to set the creative and connect the strategic business goals of the organization with the creative, and then orchestrate that all around the team that I had of I think I had about 16 people on my team within the agency. I was one of two creative directors there.
That's pretty impressive. So tell me about a couple of your favorite gigs.
Yeah, so a project that we just finished up last year was a project that we did for the Port of San Diego. And the Port of San Diego is a very interesting organization in that they manage a land grant here in San Diego, California, and it's a California land grant of 55 miles of waterfront here in San Diego on the San Diego Bay, and it touches 5 different cities. And so our clients were the leaders of the Port of San Diego and the mayors of all of these 5 different cities. And our job within that was to evolve their brand. It had been probably 25, maybe 30 years since they had done a significant brand evolution. There was a lot of innovation happening within that particular organization. They were getting into aquaculture, they've gotten into the arts, they're getting into all kinds of hospitality work, as well as the port police that they still own and govern, and all kinds of different things. So, like the Navy, for instance, is one of their biggest tenants. And so we got to work with all of those different leaders to bring them all together, help define sort of the center of the organization and how it would express itself into the culture of, say, 450 people, and then ultimately out into the world. So it was an incredibly complex but very fun process to go through. It took about a year and a half to actually go through that process and help them really evolve that brand, and then ultimately roll it out into the public.
Fantastic. And what kind of results have they achieved?
Oh, phenomenal. So there's a lot of organizations that are public entities that are under a great deal of, let's call it, scrutiny for when they do a brand evolution program or even when they market. And so there's the media looks at them as a very, very tightly for the dollars that they're going to spend and how efficient they are with those dollars. And the results of the rollout of the campaign and really the evolution program were only positive here in San Diego. So the media totally got it. They understood why we were doing it. We, as in us in the port, and they really embraced the new brand in a very, very positive way. And to the organization, it's helped them garner all kinds of new contracts and attract new employees and all kinds of things in that realm.
That's great. And before we rolled tape, so to speak, we were talking about storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to delve into that a bit and really talk about that in a way that helps convey this thing about the persona for a brand.
Yeah. So Ken, you and I share an affinity for the storytelling attributes and the power and prowess that any organization can really deploy from a story, actually first mine, and by mine I mean gather and capture, and then ultimately tell those stories. And so part of the work that I do with organizations is mining the cultural stories that exist within the organization. And so those stories, we as human beings are wired not just to belong and connect to one another, but we relate based upon how we tell stories. And those stories that continue to evangelize, they to a large extent define how we're connected and define our culture. Mm-hmm. So part of the work that I do is to mine some of that heritage and the storytelling within organizations so it can amplify the beliefs of those organizations, and especially the leaders of those organizations, and the heritage and the history of the company. And then tap into those stories to encourage the culture to share those things, to talk about what the stories actually mean. And then if they're relevant stories, represent that out into the outside world, which would be the world of their customers. And the manner in which that we both capture, identify the stories that define us, and how we tell those stories creates a bit of a persona around the organization, or a character, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so, a story like if we think about Nike and the whole crazy campaign that they just came up with. They literally do call it crazy. I'm not calling them crazy. But it's actually in the popular zeitgeist, it's probably considered the Kaepernick campaign, but that's not really what it's all about. It's all about people living their wildest dreams and Nike's invitation to do so. So that whole video, if you will, not just the commercial, but the longer video that lives online, was a whole bunch of little snippets of stories that talked about how people can step up into the courageous living. And it's Nike's way of manner of expressing their own persona, what they believe in, the just do it mindset, out into a storytelling that you could take snippets out of that particular video and say, oh, there's a story about the handicapped kid here, or the hockey player here, or the gymnast here, or Kaepernick, or whatever.
That's great. So as I think about the audience for this podcast, it's a pretty good blend, running from startup to small business to mid-size to large cap to Fortune 100 to Fortune 10 kind of people. And would you say that the type of storytelling that you do to get your message across varies a lot or a little when you're talking about that broad spectrum of businesses?
Yeah, I don't think it makes really any difference in the size of your company about, so there's a couple ways that we could address this question. So one of which is, on one level, to all of those size and shapes of organizations, are stories important? And I would suggest that they all are. Even if you're a solopreneur, you have stories about the way that you showed up with a particular client, or the speech that you gave here, or the way that you put out thought leadership, or whatever it is that your solopreneurship does. And the same thing happens with an organization like Nike or Patagonia or Samsung or Apple and those kinds of things. The stories that they decide to identify, capture, and then tell and retell over and over again, that creates the potency. And so the manner in which that either one of those organizations wouldn't necessarily be any different in how they gathered their stories, but they would be very different in how they told their stories. So, if you're a solopreneur, you probably have a very specialized audience in which you want to tell that to, and you want to make sure that that story is relevant to them. In the world of the big global brands, you're probably talking more iconic story types. You're probably tapping into Jungian psychology, and even into Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey and things like that, that are more universal style stories that can relate to more everyday people, because you're reaching a much more of a mass audience.
Excellent. So let me ask you this, and switch gears a little bit. Is there a sweet spot for you and the type of clients you like to work with?
Yeah, I think that there is. These days, most of the businesses that are coming to us, as I mentioned earlier, first and foremost, they're looking to evolve. They're very serious about kind of upping their presence and deepening their belief system and making sure that it's amplified out into the world. the size of the company, it tends to work really well for us if they're, 20 million up to 500 million in terms of size. And industry, we're very agnostic. And we work with organizations that are in nonprofit and very much for-profit, in consumer products, a lot of consumer electronics, higher education, academia, and all kinds of different things. So our sweet spot is a need versus a style of company.
Yeah. Where do you think business owners, and again, we're talking, pretty broad spectrum. You could segment them if you wish, but where do you find that businesses are most challenged in getting the word out about their business, or in marketing, or getting the message out? Where do you think that might be?
Yeah, I think marketing is one of those things that it's always on. And there's a lot of noise out there, right? So I think the biggest challenge right now is cutting through the noise and getting people's attention. So in the world of marketing, recent statistic that I read is that it takes 7 touch points for someone to first and foremost recognize that your company, your brand, or your product exists, and then another 7 for them to intellectualize and begin to create an emotional connection. And so the challenge is having enough repetition for organizations to go out there and be very consistent about the manner in which they're talking about their brand or their marketing or their advertising, but also do so in a way that talks about what's in it for the customer. So one of the things I see that companies suffer from too often, or make the mistake of too often, is talking about them too much, and not talking about how their product or service actually benefits the lives of their customers. I think if you begin to craft whatever your marketing messages is around that, around those benefits, then you're going to cut much more quickly through that clutter.
Sure. Yeah. It's the what's in it for me, right? If I'm on the receiving end, hey, what's in it for me? And I'd like to back up a step or two. I think you raised a point that I'd really like to elaborate a little bit on. And that has to do with the old theory of it takes 7 touches. I'm glad to hear you say it's 14. And not all that long ago, I was in a workshop, and it was proposed that it may be 20, 22, 24 touches, because there's so much noise out there now that you've just got to keep your message out, keep that marketing machine going. As you said, it's got to be on all the time.
Yeah. And it varies depending on what industry you're in and what sector your product or service is in. If you're a B2B company, the statistics that I've read is that it takes less touches to get their attention, but more hands-on communication to nurture them into an actual relationship. In the consumer world, because there's so many consumer products out there right now, it takes more touches, and depending on what sector, like if you're in consumer electronics, I wouldn't be surprised if it's more like 20 touches in order to get people's attention. If you're in something that's more specialized, however, like luxury goods, it might take less touches, but you're going to have to earn trust in a bigger way. Sure.
So what do you think a business should do a little bit more of to help establish their brand?
Well, I think, so establishing their brand, I think companies really should get very particular about their own belief system and what they stand for. And I think they should be very courageous in the manner in which that they communicate that out into the world, and don't be afraid to turn off people. And I don't mean insult them, but turn off people who are not your audience. And in fact, again, we go back to the Nike example, there's a lot of people that were turned off by that recent campaign. A lot of those people were maybe casual Nike customers, but they weren't the diehards. So if you think about like Harley Davidson, for instance, there's a whole group of people that they could care less about reaching. And it's not that they don't care, they just know who their tribe is. And when they express themselves from a deep belief system, and they're connecting to the zeitgeist, to the heart and soul, to the values of that particular tribe. And then there's a close relationship within that. So the more brands can really get clear about what is their belief system and who is their tribe and how do the values align within that and create communication around that, then they can be very potent in their marketing.
Excellent points. So what do you think some of the things are that both experienced and people relatively new to this thing called marketing should know about when they go about marketing their business?
Yeah. One way to think about marketing is, two things. So Peter Drucker back in the 1960s said there's really only two functions within an organization, and that's innovation and marketing. And what he meant by that essentially was innovation is the ideation to create your product or service, and marketing is essentially telling the world. So the second part of that is that all marketing functions are either helping to gain or keep your customers. So, and the only reason that that's important is that every business that I'm aware of still needs customers in order to survive. So when people think about their marketing, they should think about it both from an omni-channel perspective, and I'll talk about what I mean by that, and an always-on perspective. So omni-channel is think about all the channels and touch points that your tribe is already reaching, and know where you're touching those people and be consistent about your brand and your communication within that. And the always on is that it is literally always on. You never take your pedal off the metal. There may be peaks on that when you're doing big launches around, let's say, a product launch or a big event or something to that nature, but it should be as constant and consistent as you possibly can make it.
That's really sage advice. Really excellent advice, Steve. So I want to thank you for joining me today on the Market Your Business Like a Pro podcast. How can people best reach you? This is time for your shameless promo or plug.
Great. Thank you, Ken. And I do appreciate you inviting me into your space, into your world, and for hosting this conversation. I have a lot of respect for what you do and the podcast that you're putting out there. I know it's a lot of work, and congratulations on your second year of podcasting. That's a lot of work. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
So the best way people can reach me is through my website, is theemptygris.com, THEMTH, and then the word degree.com. And on there is a lot of free resources for people to download, including some ebooks and a lot of thought leadership that I put out into the world. And I would encourage for people to visit me there. And if they ever want to look up me on LinkedIn, of course, it's Stephen Morris, the Empty Gris, and you can find me and connect there.
Excellent. Well, I'll certainly do that. And I did go to your website. You've got some really awesome stuff there. And I really encourage all of our listeners and viewers to go and do the same thing. Steve Morris, thanks so much. We'll look forward to the next time we chat. Great having you on the show.
Ken, thank you. I appreciate it.
That's it for this week's episode. Hey, are you already using Constant Contact for your email marketing? If so, do you want to get better results from your email campaigns? Well, we can help. I invite you to join the Countess Group's Preferred Client Program to get even more out of your Constant Contact subscription. We've been certified partners of Constant Contact since the program's inception. With over 1,800 members of the Preferred Client Program since its inception, our certified email marketing experts can help you maximize the results you get from your email marketing campaigns. And it's free. There are no membership fees. And when you join the Countess Group's Preferred Client Program, you'll get access to a free review of your email marketing newsletter each month. You'll get invitations to attend exclusive VIP webinars. You'll get members-only early bird discounts to attend our boot camps and workshops. And you'll get timely tips to help your business achieve greater results. These services have a retail value of over $2,000 each year. And best of all, as a preferred client, these services are free. Why free, you might be thinking? Well, it's because when you experience our amazing service, we know that you'll refer others to us. So if you're interested, send us an email to let us know that you'd like to become our next preferred client. Just send that email to us at kc@thecountessgroup.com. marketingyourbusiness.com. Don't forget to check out our Email Marketing Online Academy. It's www.marketyourbusiness.co/email-academy. That's where you'll find out more. Check out all of our episodes of the Market Your Business Like a Pro podcast. It's on our website, marketyourbusiness.co. Look for the podcast tab, and there you'll find all previous episodes. And while you're on our website, don't forget to check out all the other resources and sign up for our weekly newsletter too.
Thanks for listening to the Market Your Business Like a Pro podcast with Ken Countess. Be sure to visit marketyourbusiness.co to access show notes, discover our fantastic content, and sign up for our mailing list. Have questions? Send Ken an email, ken@thecountessgroup.com, or Twitter @CountessGroup. See you next time.
If you need help with this or anything else related to marketing your business, reach out to us.